G'day everyone, how you going? Funny story is that my father's name's Tom. And so jokes about Tom and Gerry, I've had them before. You did a good job, it's fine. I got nominated to do this by some people I know. In fact, lots of people I know think that I am a good storyteller. And it's not that I'm not confident, because I am, but I don't really know if I know any stories. I mean, I do talk a lot, but I don't know if I know any stories. And most of my career has been standing in front of people trying to convince them to take on my point of view. And I've had a lot of different careers, a lot of different jobs, and that's sort of what I do. But it doesn't mean I'm a storyteller. It just means I talk. So when I was nominated to do this, I was like, what should I talk about? What story should I do? Should I do the one about 3 concurrent muggings in 3 different UK cities? But that's... No, I'm not going to do that one. Or should I tell the one about the stockpile of guns in New Norfolk? No, I'm not going to do that either. The problem is most of those stories are about a sentence long, so they wouldn't really work. But there was talk about, spooky stories or things like that. And what I've got to talk about tonight is it's the time that I saw something happen that didn't happen. Now, I guess the line I could think about which most sums up the experience is, it's from a great piece of literature. Sean Connery said it in the movie The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. He said, "I don't believe in ghosts, but I've seen my share." And I think that's sort of the nature of what I want to talk about. You see, I came from a family of pretty practical people. There's trades, builders, mechanics, but also very scientific people. There's certainly not a lot of belief in things that you can't see and touch. And so for me to have experiences like that is out of the ordinary, but for my family to have experiences is out of the ordinary. So, to get started, I'll talk about my family a little bit. Now, whilst I wasn't brought up in the valley, I was brought up in Claremont. I lived in Granton, and so it's sort of just downstream.
Lower Valley.
Lower Valley, very good. And the truth is we grew up a little bit scared of the Upper Valley, so... But I grew up in Claremont, and interestingly enough, unlike our Brummy friend, Cadbury's has been a huge part of my upbringing. And it's relevant to the story in a way because the story centres around Claremont. Now, I grew up in a large family. There's 10 kids in the family I grew up in, and I'm one of the older ones. And so the oldest one was William, then there's Duncan, and there was me, someone else, a few others, and there's one more down the bottom. And that's a bit rude, but it's sort of also the experience because, I grew up in one generation, but I was a generation older than the younger ones. And so the younger ones aren't going to know this story and they won't be able to appreciate it because young people, they don't know what it was like back in the day. For example, back in the day, there was no mobile phones, right? And that factors into the story. So the story starts, well, if I really want to start properly, it starts about 1819 when there was a chap called John Pascoe Faulkner, and he's famous for a couple of reasons, but one of the things he got was a big grant of land in Claremont. And I could go into the details about where and what and whatever, but it doesn't really matter. Point is, he got some land in Claremont, and He did lots of good things and was so famous they went and named a big mountain after him. I'm sure you know the one I mean. And that piece of land he had until he sold it to a bloke called Henry Bilton. And he did not get a mountain named after him. He got a small cul-de-sac off Box Hill Road named after him. But what Mr. Bilton did do was he built a house. And looking at the kind of houses Claremont has and looking at this one, I suggest he was reasonably well off, because it was a 2-storey Georgian mansion, probably is a good way to put it. Beautiful thing. And I don't want to sit here and tell you who owned it and all the people who were there and everything that happened. Needless to say, though, there was the most longest serving and successful Australian cricketer before Don Bradman. There was a former Tasmanian Premier. Quite a few people lived there, quite a few people who owned it, and quite a few people improved it. And one of the improvements on this particular house was to add a beautiful Italianate tower with a widow's walk. And so some of you know what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about Claremont House. And Claremont House is visible from most of Claremont. And even if you don't know what it is, you've probably seen it. Because if you drive south from here, driving towards town, as you go through Claremont, you'll see it. It's on your left. Now, when I was growing up, I didn't know it was called Claremont House. I knew it was called Lady Clark Hospital, because Lady Clark was, of course, the wife of the governor, but was also involved with the Red Cross, and they acquired it to build a convalescent hospital, and that's the name it developed. Now, my family are the sort of family who likes to know details, and we want to study things, we want to understand, and we want to know, and we do. But like I say, we're also the sort of family who, I won't say we're skeptics and we don't believe, but I'd say that we understand what we can touch, what we can see, and what we can study, and what research has been done. So we're not the kind that would accept strange things. There's another thing too about being a large family is, how do you get around? So we had white vans. The first white van I remember was a Mazda E20 van, and you could fit all of us in it until there were more. And once there were more, you couldn't. So my parents sold that in 1988, and they bought a Nissan Urban van, which you could fit all of us in until you couldn't. And so Dad went to a Wreckers and he bought another row of bench seats and bolted them in. And then he bought collapsible dicky seats to mount in, and you could fit us all in. And so one day, I would suggest around 1990, we'd been out somewhere around Hobart, and forgive me, I don't remember where, I don't remember why. And it's unusual too, because the other thing about being in a large family is we really didn't have a lot of money. So the idea that we would have been out taking in a show or having a fancy dinner is not something that would have happened. But for some reason or other we were out, and we drove home. And now I don't know about everyone else, but does anyone here have that thing in your family where places are named or things are named based on your own experiences, but they may not be the actual name? So we were driving home and we drove along the Brooker Highway, heading north, passed by Montrose, and we started heading up William Adams Hill. Now, I don't know if anyone else knows that it's called William Adams Hill, but it's called William Adams Hill because William Adams is there. And it may even not even have a name, but that's what it's called to us. And I have given people directions before saying, just go up William Adams Hill and turn left, and they say, sweet, I know what left means, but I don't know what William Adams Hill means. And so we were driving up William Adams Hill. And when you crest William Adams Hill, you can look, and that's when you first see Claremont. You can look to your right and see Cadbury's, and you can look to your left and see Mount Faulkner. But if you look to your right towards Cadbury's, you can see Claremont House. You can see the beautiful Italianate tower with the Widow's Walk. And if, like me, you've been inside it, you know what it really looks like. Because it used to be owned for a while, or at least used for a while, by adult education. And they taught art classes and things in there, and I was able to tour that as a younger man. And I remember seeing the inside walls were painted like a Tasmanian forest, and they were beautiful. And those who are exactly my age will know that there was a cartoon on television called Count Duckula. And I can remember distinctly seeing Count Duckula's face peeking through the grass painted on the wall. That's not really pertinent to this story, but I think it's called colour. So anyway, we're driving up William Adams Hill, and my family are all yap. But the thing is, I don't mind talking to crowds, but I don't really feel comfortable talking to people that much. I'm not, like, it was amazing when I was at work and they gave me that Myers-Briggs test and it said introvert. And I was like, me? But the truth is I am. I really struggle with interpersonal stuff. So I'm in the car, everyone's rap, and I'm like looking out the window. I don't want to be involved because I'll probably get yelled at anyway. I don't want it. And so as we come over the hill, I look across to that tower. I didn't see what I expected to see. What I saw was an inferno. The whole building was on fire. There was 4 windows in that tower. I could see 2 obviously on my side. They were smashed out. Flames were billowing up to the sky, higher than the roof of the tower. Intense flames. In my mind I could hear them. Probably couldn't, but that might be, exaggeration, but I could certainly see them, and it was intense light. The surrounding pine trees were illuminated by this light. And so, I was probably a 10-year-old. I did what every 10-year-old would do. I called for Dad. Dad was driving. I said, Dad, Lady Clark Hospital's on fire. Dad, Lady Clark Hospital's on fire. And of course everyone's turned around and looked. And everyone said, oh my God, Lady Clark Hospital's on fire. It's burning down. And now what would you do? Obviously you'd get your mobile out and you'd call the fire brigade. But couldn't do that in those days. And Dad, being a man of action, he knew what to do. You find the nearest landline. And the nearest landline was in Claremont. It was in Abbotsfield Road where my grandparents lived. So it wouldn't have been more than 90 seconds. Down the highway, turn left, up Abbotsfield Road, they had the key out. We went in, we all chirped in, and Dad dialed 000 on the phone. Dialed 000 on the phone. And he called and said, which service do you require? And he said, fire brigade. And so they put him through to the fire brigade on Main Road in Berridale just there. And he said, there's a huge fire at the Lady Clark Hospital, Claremont House. It's really blazing, it's huge. And they said, really? It doesn't look like it. And he said, it's on fire, it's insane, like we all saw it, it's crazy. And they said, really? And so they said, we'll go check it out. Give us your phone number. Stay there. And so it was like, I was going to tell you the phone number, but I won't. The point is, he gave him the phone number and we did stay there. And it was probably about 10 minutes later, only about 10 minutes. And in fairness, to get the guys in the fire truck, to drive up Main Road, to have a quick look and see Claremont House, to swear a bit, to turn around and come back and then park, that's about 10 minutes. And the phone rang and Dad answered it. Hello. Yeah, but okay. And we all said, what did they say? And Dad said something about threatening to charge us for wasting the fire brigade's time. Prank calls were mentioned. And the truth is, it's a bit of an empty story because everyone wants me to say what happened. But I can't, I don't know. And, I grew up in Claremont, I lived there for a long time, and I've known a lot of people who have, and I've come back to this and I've asked people. And then someone invented Facebook and I asked everyone on there. Nobody knows and nobody remembers. And I even had a look the other day at the Claremont house and it's not burnt down. So I absolutely saw something, but it absolutely didn't happen. So that's my story.